As you can see, this is an official event from the EU Green Week, and hence it will be recorded. If you do not wish to be seen on camera, please turn off your cameras. Otherwise, we will welcome your interaction with you, and at the end of the event, we will have a dedicated session for a Q&A, and we also have a small surprise in the form of a poll. But before that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Cristina Zigomalas. I'm part of a very exciting project called Life Terra, which is co-financed by the European Commission, DG Environment, under the LIFE program. And this Life Terra aims to plant 500 million trees in Europe in the next 5 years. We will show you a very short video about Life Terra later. But meanwhile, we would like to thank the European Commission and the organizers for including us in this year's green event. Let's now go forward with the panelists. I'm not alone. I'm joined by 3 fellow panelists and speakers. Pedro Lopes, who is a corporate regional director in Algarve at the Pestana Group, which is a very successful Portuguese company, boasting over 100 international hotels and resorts. Then we have Carlos Rio Carvalho. He's a forestry and nature conservation specialist, and he's also a part of the Life Terra team. Then we have Cherelle de Raaf, who she focuses and practices sustainable travel and writes about it in her Dutch blog called lacherelle.nl. But she also works as a content marketeer for Gaboni, I hope I pronounced it right, the so-called Airbnb of the camper world. Now, before we dive into the topic, which is about making tourism more sustainable and reconciling it with the environment, I would like to show you the promised short video about Life Terra. It's only 3 minutes, or even less, I think 2, and it's about how planting trees is a concrete step toward restoring our relationship with nature and tackling climate change effects and encouraging a more sustainable mobility and some new consumption patterns. Please show the video.
Ik wil een groen en duurzaam Europa voor mijn kinderen en voor alle volgende generaties.
Life Terra heeft een hele ambitieuze doelstelling, namelijk het planten van 500 miljoen bomen. 1 voor en door elke Europeaan. We zijn door heel veel landen in Europa geweest om te kijken hoe het stond met de bossen. En het is schrikbarend wat klimaatverandering teweeg brengt. Enorme stukken gebied worden gerooid omdat ze aangevallen worden door de barkbeetle of door andere plagen. We hebben het droogte-effect en dus een enorme impact op onze bossenstand. Hoe gaan we nou ervoor zorgen dat wat we nu planten, dat het zin heeft en dat het over 50 jaar nog staat en gezond is? Dat kan denk ik alleen maar doordat we zorgen voor verschillende soorten bomen en daarnaast kijken of we misschien nieuwe soorten of soorten uit zuidelijke landen kunnen plaatsen die meer bestand zijn tegen de droogte, die ons beschermen tegen verdere klimaatverandering. Dus the right tree in the right place.
De symboliek van 500 miljoen bomen, 1 voor elke Europeaan, is heel krachtig. Wat we willen is dat we de hele maatschappij meetrekken om in actie te komen. En dat het hopelijk niet bij die 500 miljoen bomen blijft. Maar dat het ook gaat over het beperken van de uitstoot, over het veranderen van onze levensstijl, om te zorgen dat we naar een duurzame maatschappij toe gaan, post-Covid.
Life Terra is co-financed by the European Commission through the LIFE program.
Thank you. I think this is a very moving video, and it never fails to resonate with me and to make me feel proud that I'm actually doing something as opposed to just talking or reading. Now, it's about tourism. The topic we're going to tackle today is tourism. So tourism is not a EU policy, it's not cohesion, it's not the common agricultural policy, it's not the LIFE program. So, but it is one of the first industries of our continent. And we Europeans are very frequent and keen travelers. I don't know if you know that Europe is still the world's top tourist destination, and it absorbs over 40% of the world tourism market. This corresponds to roughly 700 million inbound tourists each year. So if you think that Europeans are about 500 million, it's almost half of the European population on top. Now, this was before the pandemic, and nobody knows whether these figures will go up to the same level. And in any case, travel and tourism are a very, very important economic factor that accrues over 2,191 billion euros in 2019 in European GDP, and accounting for over 38 million jobs. Now, the figure of the turnover was halved during the pandemic, so you can imagine how dramatic that was. And the jobs, they were slightly less, 35 million. So I'm not going to talk about employment. I'm going to talk about the impact of tourism. So I will ask a question to our panelists. Do you know which is the top European tourist destination? Who wants to answer? Maybe
Yeah, I would like to take a guess. I feel like France, Spain, and Italy are like the top 3 destinations.
Wow, you must read all the market research or the stats, because you are absolutely right. I think France has been almost hitting the 100 million tourists some years. The last count was 89, followed by Spain with 86, and I think Italy slightly less. So again, these are hundreds of millions of people visiting Mediterranean or other fragile ecosystems. What about Pedro Lopez? What about Portugal? Can you tell us just a few figures? Unmute, please. Pedro, you need to unmute. Thanks. So yeah, figures about Portugal.
Christina, Portugal is a small country. It's 1/5 of size of, for example, Spain, 1/6 of the size of France. So our figures, we are never in the top 5, or we are close to the top 10 in numbers. But for us, as you can imagine, as a small country, very diversified country, we don't bet on a big volume, big number of tourism. So we prefer to have a nice number that balance with local communities, balance with landscape. So we are never focused in having a big number. Tourism in Portugal is mainly Algarve, south of Portugal, where I am. Lisbon and Oporto are wonderful cities to visit. In the islands, Madeira, Porto Santo, and Açores are also wonderful islands. But we are not on the championship of the top in number of tourism. In terms of prizes, we are winning a few prizes. In the last 2 years, Portugal was best country in Europe to visit. Also, we win, for example, in the last 5 years, 2 or 3 prizes about best golf destination, holidays destination, and also beaches. We sometimes, a few times, we win.
So you go more for quality than quantity. I get that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you. So now, I'm sure you're aware, or perhaps if you're not, I'd like to remind you that these incredible figures are also the result of the liberalization of air travel and the Schengen area. And these are both European Union achievements. These were coupled with the fact that Europeans can enjoy incredibly high paid holiday schemes. I think they're unique in the world if you compare them to Japan or the United States or China. And of course, technology. The digital platform has been incredibly important in the booking and the incoming support. So now the flip side is that these developments have not paid full tribute to the environmental impact that travel and tourism have. And I'm just going to mention a few: climate change, the loss of biodiversity, air pollution, which is obviously the theme of this year's Green Week, pollution, and the pressure on ecosystems. I would like to remind you that nobody pays for these ecosystems. So nature provides an incredible amount of services that don't get paid for. And whether the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns have considerably reduced the effects of climate change is currently being debated. It's not a sure thing. However, tourism is very important for us, for our quality of life, because we are proud of Europe. We would like to travel, to visit people and unique places. A lot of heritage sites are obviously based, I think 80% of the UNESCO World Heritage is based in Europe. So it is important for all sorts of reasons, and ultimately also because it's a very important economic sector for most countries, if not the only economic income source. So it is important to start reconciling it with the environment and with the climate change effects. And now we come to the term sustainable tourism. It's a catchy phrase, but if you ask me, it's not a definition. There is no one definition, and there are as yet no agreed standards and figures. You know, a lot, and we will hear from Pestana what their approach is, which is highly modern and highly innovative, but that's what Pestana have done as a company. There are, you know, like the organic regulation, there are no certification schemes. So in a way, it's like do as you please and do something so that you reduce your environmental impact. However, the United Nations has stepped in with the Millennium Goals and the Sustainability Goals, and they all seek to set a global framework to end poverty, fight inequality and injustice, and fix climate change. So the role of tourism could also be to support the turnaround between, let's call it bad tourism or tourism that impacts the environment negatively, and, for example, sustaining renewable energy. Because if you have income and you invest that income from tourism in renewable energy, then tourism is a positive factor. So we believe that every concrete step counts, and we are happy to present concrete solutions coming from the Algarve, Portugal. We shot a very, very nice video a couple of weeks ago in this province of Silves in the Algarve. And I'd like to thank Pestana also for their hospitality. And you will see what this video is about in a minute. It's restoring the landscape. Please launch the video.
We are in the mountain area of Algarve, where about 15 years ago we did investment. We bought about 600 hectares. And why? Because each 14 years, more or less 15 years, we had always big fires in this area, in the mountain area. And each fire, the landscape was worse and worse and worse. The last one, unfortunately, was in 2018. And since there, we are investing in changing the landscape, in planting thousands of trees.
The fire was so big, 43,000 hectares, and with such a destructive potential. The vegetation was destroyed, and immediately after the fire, we had the erosion factors. That is a huge impact. During the fire, we have also an episode of pollution.
Nesse dia, o que é que acontece? Eu estava em Portimão para essa sexta-feira que eu cheguei aqui sob a manhã e o fogo, como efetivamente subiu com o vento sueste, vindo de sul, sul-sueste, levou o fogo para norte. Depois, de quarta para quinta, começou a vir de norte para sul, sudoeste. O que é que aconteceu? Aconteceu que vir da Serra de Monchique, eu acompanhei isso tudo porque estive presente, estive até ao fim com os bombeiros, com as entidades públicas, GNR, etc, etc.
Ao longo da serra e que estão abandonadas, e isto é bem importante pensar em políticas que possam de certa maneira manter as pessoas em suas casas para que esta necessidade de limpar exista e coexista com essas pessoas que vivem nesses locais. O que é que se tem que fazer então em termos de futuro para que nós possamos então de certa maneira evitar isto que já aconteceu aqui? No fundo, temos que apostar bastante na prevenção. Se olharmos na prevenção, olharmos sempre no futuro e prevenirmos, antecipar-nos àquilo que possa acontecer, julgo que estamos a dar um passo em frente. Neste caso concreto, Silves, em conjunto com Monchique, faz parte então de um projeto de reorganização paisagística. Somos pioneiros nesta área aqui.
The main issue on reforestation is the maintenance of forest. It's not possible only to plant and let the plants there. We must have an effort that is prolonged in 20, 40 years, that must be kept. We must have mixed landscape with open areas, maintaining the bushes, maintaining the forest, but having a reasonable amount of open areas to prevent the progression of fires. And to do this, we must have economical activities that, in its own way of managing, result in managing landscape. For instance, if you have touristical activities and you should have a beautiful and safe place, you gain in managing forest of your own. Life Terra is an important project because it brings attention to the issue and creates a network of people worried and able to work and to do positive things about planting. And is worried in several segments of the population, the schools, the associations, the companies, and addresses everyone. It is not going to plant everything everywhere, but it is going to create a movement.
Sustainability of tourism is a key word for us. The footprint of tourism is still big, but we have to create better plans, we have to create better environments, better hotel units, better service in terms of be sure that we use as much as less of possible resources. Tourism has I think as an advantage against other industries. We are here for the long term. We have some programs with schools, some programs with tourists if they want to participate. We do it in the golf courses, in the hotels, in the resorts, and it's funny because people like to be involved.
Nós temos de ser sempre otimistas porque senão não caminhamos para a frente. O que me dá essa esperança de ser otimista é precisamente ter pessoas com quem me tenho envolvido.
What gives me hope is being here.
Earth is beautiful. And if we keep doing our behavior well, it's a paradise. And our role is to keep this paradise, not to destroy it.
Life Terra is co-financed by the European Commission through the
Well, I have to say that the messages also give me hope. And I'm very happy that this Green Week, though virtual, by the way, with the lowest environmental impact in decades, because these conferences used to be, they used to be held in Brussels, and everybody was flying or whatever to the Green Week. And this year it's virtual, so we're actually in a way doing a few things right because of the constraints. And but it's also interesting to see that we can reach out to so many people at the same time in various European countries, and this gives me personally the hope to go forward. Carlos, do you really think you're a forest an agricultural engineer, you're very competent, and do you really think that in Europe landscape management can play a role in pollution control, technically and also in the long term? Carlos.
Oh, hello. Of course I do. It's more or less intuitive that you can see if when you have a huge fire event, you have a huge pollution event. And fire events are prevented mainly by landscape management. It's a simple idea, but not so well known as I desire. Because landscape management is in fact the only way to prevent it in the long term, those massive and highly pollutant events. But at the same time, when we manage the landscape and we plant trees and we keep them in, we are also extracting greenhouse gases from atmosphere, the CO2 from the atmosphere. So of course it is. Of course, landscape management is linked with pollution. Is a kind of trivial idea, but
okay, thank you.
It's trivial, but sometimes it's not understood.
Sherelle, do you think that camping and having a nice tent planted in a place like Silvish, how would you score that? Would that be environmentally friendly? Would you recommend that?
I always try to keep in mind that my holiday destination and the place where I stay is someone's home. So in order to do that, you can always pick like a green hotel or choose sustainable accommodations and operators, such as Pastana. And then you can always try, even when you're in the nature or whatever you are, always try to support community-based tourism. So try to eat and buy locally. That's things that are really important for me. But also initiatives and respect the practices of the local people is just really important wherever you're going to stay, wherever you're going to park your tent. You can also prevent over-tourism by traveling in the off-season. I think that's a very important one. Just get off the beaten path and staying outside the city center, for example, but also using efficient modes of transportation, such as the train or electrical motorhome. It's always better than going by plane, for example.
Well, you may be happy to hear that the European Union has declared 2021, maybe it was very optimistic, the year of the rail. I don't know how much is going to be implemented, but I know for a fact that they are investing with structural funds and other European funds. They are heavily investing in restoring the trains and also the night trains. So in the hope that all this kind of fleeting around on cheap flights, which do not obviously give the economic value back to the ecosystems, so they can be possible. And one day, Pedro, maybe people will come by train to Portugal like 100 years ago. What do you think?
I agree completely. Our train system is not very good, mainly in south of Portugal, Alentejo and Algarve. Is very old, is not updated. So here people usually get a flight and rent a car. This is the way usually tourists are here, or come by car, or come by flight and rent a car. But of course, train, we are pushing a lot. We are pushing a lot government and all the authorities to invest much more in railroad, in trains, in in the infrastructure because it's old and is not going to the right places. It was, as you can imagine, it was from the 60s or in 50s of last century and never was changed since then. So it's a weak point of Algarve destination is train transportation. Between the cities, Lisbon and Oporto, no. We have a nice train, you can go quickly and it went well, as like from Lisbon to Algarve, the train went well. Only inside the region, the train is not good yet, but we hope it will improve.
So I thank you for telling us. I didn't know that Pestana is also promoting and investing in the different forms of infrastructure. How did Pestana come to these very enlightened and innovative goals?
We are here for the long term, and we are a big company, so I think we have to give the example. So, for example, here in Algarve is divided in two slices, south of Portugal. One slice is the sea and the golf courses and win money, but the other slice, half of Algarve, is mountains, basic mountains, and we had that problem that the mountains had huge fires periodically. So we decided, come on, we are here for long term. We are happy close to the sea, but we also have to help the countryside, help the mountains area, help the rural population. So this is why we decided to invest in a big property in the north of Algarve in the mountains and try to do something for the future. We know that tree planting, it takes time, takes 20 years to get the right trees for the right size, but we have to start and we have to give the example so other ones can follow it, and you can for once forever change the landscape in Silves Mountains and Monchique Mountains, and for once forever try to stop this very bad situation of these huge, bigger fires in each.
But it takes two to tango, and one thing is the company, and a very enlightened one, as Pestana is. But you also need, the legislative framework. So we, in our when we researched for this video, we also interviewed and researched what the Portuguese government has done, which is also very inspiring and innovative. And we interviewed Ms. Fernanda do Carmo, who is the Director for Territorial Development at the Portuguese Ministry. And we asked her about how the Portuguese government reacted to the very, very serious and dramatic impact of the forest fires. And Fernanda could not be with us today, but luckily we have a recorded interview, and she will tell us more about how the Portuguese legislation came to be passed very quickly, I have to say. And I wonder whether this could also be an inspiring example for other European member states. Please show the video.
Com o fogo da Serra de Monchique, das Serras de Monchique e Silves, que deu origem a um conjunto de medidas de política pública, e houve um grande debate em torno dos territórios vulneráveis da floresta, da paisagem, de como transformar a paisagem para tornar esses territórios mais resilientes ao fogo e mais adaptados, com maior adaptação para o que vem aí das alterações climáticas. O Ministro do Ambiente e da Ação Climática decidiu lançar um projeto piloto, que foi um programa de reordenamento e gestão da paisagem para a Serra de Monchique e Silves, recentemente ardida, e, portanto, esse projeto piloto desenvolveu-se e foi a gênese, deu origem, foi um projeto inspirador para todo o quadro legal e o quadro operacional que estamos hoje a executar. Portanto, experimentámos ali algumas soluções que depois deram origem a esta nova medida de política, que é o Programa de Transformação da Paisagem. Ele nasceu das experiências que fizemos na sequência destes grandes incêndios. Deu origem a este quadro. Este quadro, para nós, em Portugal, é inovador. Ele nasceu no âmbito de uma visão que, no fundo, e corresponde a uma ideia do nosso ordenamento do território atualmente, que é a de valorizar o território através da paisagem. E nesse âmbito, né, dessa visão, nós também estamos completamente alinhados e este projeto é um projeto core desse nosso alinhamento com a agenda territorial europeia. É de facto muito impactante, mas não é só, também o impacto ao nível do capital natural, que nós referimos como capital natural, aquele triângulo água, solo, biodiversidade, é um triângulo essencial, enfim, para a nossa sobrevivência. Bom, aqui o que me dá grande esperança no futuro é que, de facto, estamos no início ainda, mas estamos a conseguir promover este envolvimento de todos os atores. Essa é a esperança. Se conseguirmos envolver todos estes atores, certamente conseguiríamos fazer este caminho. Trouxe essas consequências, mas a pandemia trouxe oportunidades também, oportunidades de futuro. Ou seja, todos nós começámos a pensar um bocadinho diferente, o viver, o habitar, como é que organizamos a nossa vida. A esperança é que se conjugue estas dinâmicas de iniciativa de política pública com estas expectativas dos cidadãos, portugueses e europeus.
Well, you must be very proud to be Portuguese, Carlos and Pedro, because you're ticking more than one box. You're ticking the regional development box, you're ticking the enlightened company box, and you're ticking the central government box in being aligned, doing the right thing. So, Carlos, since I know that you're very passionate, do you think they could even do more?
Firstly, I hope this interview of Fernando do Carmo can be in our media to be seen in his full version. It's an important
Sure.
And this new set of laws about landscape transformation are in fact innovative and in fact very important. They are not important because they already obtained the result, but they change two essential things. First, they see the landscape transformation as an economic problem. A lot of regions are in Portugal that mountain regions and are depressive regions. So the key for landscape transformation is economic transformation, and this law considers this. And second, this new set of laws recognize the need of the payment for the ecosystem services. It's a totally new idea in a kind of law in this type of laws. For these two reasons, is an innovative and very important law. The fact that the first experience or the case where the law was created is in Monchique and Silva is also very good, because as Fernando do Carmo said, at that place it was and it is possible to join multiple actors in society. We have here a few of them, and as she said also, this is very important. So changing economy, paying for ecosystem services, and have the capacity of effectively put people together and making them build the landscape transformation, I think she's right. It is very important. It is very innovative. That's why
Thank you. Now, Sherelle, I'm not going to ask you about legislative frameworks or EU funding or whatever, but I'm going to ask you something where you're very competent and also quite, advanced in you're very courageous in what you're doing. So, because, you know, to practice sustainable tourism, I mean, I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest with you. I mean, of course, if a hotel is labeled green, I will book it. But I mean, this is more a casual occurrence than a planned one. So, do you think tourism, in truth, is more of a blessing or a threat? And if you look at the Algarve example and how a country is reacting, does that give you hope that other maybe regions you know of, maybe the Netherlands or other countries in maybe Northern Europe or Mediterranean region, they are also following suit?
Well, honesty, I do feel like mass tourism is a curse for our planet because of its giant carbon footprint, actually. But it doesn't mean it has to be. However, I see beaches covered in trash and fragile marine areas getting trashed and so on. But yeah, luckily, more and more tour operators and governments are recognizing the importance of responsible tourism in order to protect our environments. So we now have like initiatives such as global plastic tourism, and they aim to reduce the impact of plastic waste generated by tourism. So I feel like we do need more and more people to be aware of this, also by starting to educate young people on this topic. But we definitely need help from the European Union and the local governments as well. And for people who love to travel just like me and like to go on holidays, I always say to them, leave a place better than you found it. I think if everyone would do that, the world would be a better place for sure.
I like what you're saying, and I also like the fact that you mentioned funding from, you know, the governments and the European Union, because there will be so much money raining on us in the next 7 years. It's almost frightening. And I, for one, am hoping that it will be funneled and channeled properly in order to create not just sustainable tourism, but sustainable modes of living, of not just traveling, but living, you know, in the buildings, and also what we eat. So if you've read the Green Deal, and if it were the Bible, we would have to turn it into concrete actions every day. So I think we're on the cusp of great change. Perhaps the COVID pandemic will accelerate, for good or worse, this change, and I, for one, hope that it will. So I thank you, fellow panelists, and I also thank the Live Terra team in the invisible Live Terra team. I know you're there and you're helping. I would like now to hear from the participants, and I promised to launch a poll, and this poll is in the form of 4 multiple choice questions. So I hope you enjoy the polls, and I'll see you in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Christina?
Yes.
61% voted so far. So let's give it one more minute or two.
Thank you. This is Nadia Stomp, also part of the Life Terra great team.
Hi, everyone.
Well, I'm happy that at least the participation rate was higher than the voting participation in the European Parliament, which last time was 54%. So well done. 66. So yeah, maybe we should do more such things. Now, I think, yeah, we still have about 15 minutes until the end of the event, so why not give people, maybe they have to consult their iPhones for answers, I don't know, Google something.
66% voted. I would say let's give it 30 seconds more, Christina, and then we launch the results.
Okay. Well, I think we have honest answers here. We have very honest answers, and the first one, 57% voted important. How important is sustainability to you when it comes to your own holidays? So, you know, if you want to brag and, you know, think very important, I think we would all be cheating because it's simply not possible at the moment. So saying important marks a change of heart or a change of consumer choices. And I'm happy to see that somewhat important is lower than very important. So somewhat important is 14% and very important is 29%. So I think it's a very honest and credible set of replies. Now, this is tricky because we talked about forest fires, but forests have been impacted by several aspects of climate change. And we just mentioned fires, droughts, and pests, which are the most obvious ones in the last years. So, in fact, the correct answer is all six, because the southern countries have suffered forest fires. Germany has suffered pests and droughts. I'm not sure about Ireland. Maybe, Carlos, you can answer that. Pests?
Pests is everywhere.
Okay, pests is everywhere, so there you go. Plus, you have droughts in Germany, I remember, because I lived in Berlin and I remember that. Then you have fires. So, unfortunately, European forests need addressing, need help. And reforestation is just one of the solutions. Question number 3. If you had to choose, on which level do you think environmental policies and laws should primarily take place? And I'm happy that maybe the Green Week organizers will see that the overwhelming majority, 71%, said European. And 29% said national, and no one said regional. And that tallies very well with the debate we've been having, because we believe that climate change and environmental impact does not stop at borders. And we have this European Union, and we are in it together to solve problems and create new opportunities. So I'm very happy to see the 71%. Last question. Planting trees contributes to mitigate climate change because shadow diminishes atmospheric temperature, 7%. Wood building is more environmentally friendly, 14%. Plants capture and retain carbon, there you go, 79%. A very competent and well-educated audience, thank you very much. I'm now going to click it off. So, yes, I hear that Josephine Hannay wrote that gorse is a very flammable bush present in Northern Ireland and Scotland, Okay, so there were also fires in the Mourne Mountains there. Yes, Brexit unfortunately does not consider this a statistical fact, but of course it is important that we also talk about countries that are maybe accession or have left the Union. So thank you very much, Josephine. And now we have exactly 10 minutes or 12 for you to ask questions directly by raising hand and speaking, or in the chat. Who wants to start? Oh, perhaps the speakers would like to ask one another questions, or they would like to ask the participants some questions.
Actually, I do had a question. I was wondering, like, if there are people listening in the chat right now, and they like to go traveling to Portugal, what programs from Life Terra can tourists participate in?
So, are you talking about the planting activities?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, you will receive tons of information from us now. You will probably subscribe to the newsletter and follow for the next 4 years. So there will be the Netherlands, there will be Greece, Italy. You can travel maybe, and it would be nice to actually couple tourism with planting activities. That's an idea. So Antonio Heitor wrote, knowing that it's crucial to establish limits to tourism activities, especially in rural areas, and assuming the Serra Algarve is an important tourism resource, how to face rural agriculture and forestry abandonment? I think it's a good question, and I think that Mrs. Fernanda do Carmo talked about land abandonment, but also the mayor of Silves. So Carlos or Pedro, would you like to answer that?
Okay, Carlos, do you allow me to start?
Yes, sir.
This work, the fire was in 2018, but all the legislation, all the, as you said, Christina, to dance we need more than an apartment. To have a big dance ballet, you need a lot of partners. So we both are not young guys, and we are here for the last, at least, we can say 10 years, jointing efforts between the municipality of Silves and Monchique, between some companies, between some local, regional, and national institutions, like the one the lady who spoke presented. So it takes time to join, to change mindsets and to join people to do activities for the community all together, because each people is his own institution and his own mindset, it's not easy. Answer the question, one of the roles of these investments in the Silves Mountains is also to create something for the people who live there can be profitable for them. For example, we will not do hotels there, no one, not new hotels, not new constructions, but we'll develop places where you can walk and see the fauna and the flora around. Guys like Carlos and people like them who explain what are the species, the trees, the birds. You can see eagles there, the birds you can see. So also with the change of landscape, the local people, local communities can start to sell honey, can start to sell medronho, is a liquor, can start to sell local products that people who come for, we are sure, like Cheryl said, that people who come from Algarve like to try, like to buy, like to test, and like to be involved. So the tourists we invited already to go to the mountains, they like it, to pick up an orange, to install a new tree. So a good experience. And our key, first is to change the landscape, not to have the new fires. And the second target focus is to help core communities to live there, to have some economics there, and not just to abandon and to change for a desert area.
But obviously this will take time, so I hope that, Antonio, you're happy with this reply.
Christine, I would like to add something. Okay?
Please.
Well, answering to Antonio Tour. Well, in the day where we be worried about the carrying capacity of the mountains of Sils and Moshik to tourism, in that day I will be happy. It is a sign that we develop the activities in those places enough to be worried about their carrying capacity for tourism. So, in brief, those areas are excellent, as Pedro said, are excellent scenarios to activities that diversify the tourism offer in that place. But to have that diversified offer, we have a long way to walk, and the basic condition is that they are safe and there are people that understand this idea. I suppose the main issue about Grupo Pestana is that they understood the idea, and this is a huge value, enormous value to be copied and understood by other persons.
Now, there's a very difficult question here, and I'm happy that I'm not the one tasked to answer it, because Paulo Pimenta de Castro asked, what criteria do you recommend to reconcile the human pressure associated with tourism? So if sustainable tourism were defined by, standards and figures, then we would have criteria. But as it is, and we said in the beginning, it's it's new terrain. So what Pestana is doing is definitely more than what a lot of others are not doing. But what do you think, Sherelle? Let's say Pedro and Carlos, just say one or two criteria that would be, the Bible of sustainable mobility. Just one or two words.
I think rules and regulations.
Regulations
and planning. So we have areas we can build and areas we just cannot build, period. And these areas need to be protected. So
stringent protectionary regulations. Sherelle?
For me, it would be an electrical future, electrical cars and motorhomes and stuff.
So the criteria would be if your mobility is by electric cars, you would gain some points, or you would have some special treatment. And Carlos?
Well, the keyword is monitoring. We must monitor that. We must have indicators. We must have studies about the carrying capacity and then manage the process. What we can do is to avoid development with fears of some things that we don't know that if they really happen. So what we need right now is to develop these activities, having monitoring and having some key indicators of good health of the ecosystems and avoiding pollution, etc. So monitoring is the key word.
Okay, may I add my own? I think that thanks to COVID, we all traveled locally or not at all. And in fact, Europeans are blessed with beauty and culture almost everywhere, every corner of Europe. You would have natural beauty or heritage sites, beaches, mountains, and whatever. So perhaps the criteria is also to travel locally as much as you can, and maybe invest in a long haul flight, I don't know, once a year maximum, or every 2 or 3 years. So travel locally is for me a very, very sound criterion, and I think it makes sense. Oh, thank you, Limor. Limor is also part of Life Terra, and she gave us a very nice message, which I'm going to read out. Thank you all for such an interesting conference. Inspiring to see what we can do in terms of sustainable travel. I had to leave early. Yes, well, we are actually at the end of this very, very interesting event for which I thank you. And I want to renew my thanks to the Life Terra partners and, of course, my fellow speakers. And if you'd like to join the Life Terra, I call it movement, but I mean, it's not yet a movement, but it's a project. So I would ask Tiago or others to send in the chat line the link to the platform. And via the platform, the website, you can subscribe to the newsletters, but also start planting, because 500 million trees needs volunteering, needs organization, focus, and a bit of sacrifice. And since we're all in this together, we would welcome if you could also help us make this a successful movement. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of the Green Week. Take care.
Life Terra is co-financed by the European Commission through the LIFE program.